Welcome into episode 599. Great meal, great deal of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian D. Felice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget and Scott, how are you two doing today?
I'm doing good. The children are starting to starve again, though. The 99 free kids meals when the Red Sox win, they were they were eating healthy for about a month there. Now all of a sudden, the Red Sox lose 5 in a row again.
The 99's like, thank God we're getting a break. We couldn't afford this. We were going out of business.
Seriously. It's interesting with the Red Sox, too, because they obviously go on a streak where they won, what was it? Was it 26 of 30 or something like that prior to their losing streak?
27 of 30 at one point. It was 31 out of 36.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like that is not worth overreacting to, that's a proper reaction, like giving them flowers for that streak. But it is interesting to see them lose, 4 or 5 in a row afterwards, and then all of a sudden the sky is falling. I just feel like the panic meter in baseball. Now, this Red Sox team has tested that theory this year because they were quite literally one of the worst Red Sox teams of all time, and then they went on a historic run. So they've been extreme this year. But there's just so many games in the baseball season. I don't know how you can get bent out of shape one way or the other over like a 3-game slide or a 4-game slide. It's like,
No, you can. I do think like what has kind of damned it a little though is it when the Red Sox went on that hot streak, it looked like ooh, they might chase down Tampa and win the division. And now their slide has actually coincided with Tampa going on their own 9-game winning streak, and now the Red Sox are back to being like 10 games out. And it's like, okay, they're not winning the division. That's probably out of the question. But I mean, even that, I don't, a month and a half, can you make up 10 games? Like that's also happened before. So you're right. Like it's such a long season. It's so many games. But yeah, I'm not panicking over them losing 5 in a row. But it has made me like kind of readjust to like, all right, they probably are just a wild card team, which is, what they were trending towards anyways. But for a while there, it did seem like maybe the division was within reach.
Brian, this all started because you said $5.99, great meals, great deals. Just so you know, this one somehow ended up on the Red Sox. But we do want to talk about the Bruins today. We get some ideas. I feel like last episode I was like straight up out of ideas. I had to dig deep this week. Last episode we talked about the Ocho, and then I kept sending you guys videos of like the mopping and it was like the housekeeping something. I don't know. It was all crazy.
By the way, yeah, I was gonna say if listeners were sick of hearing about all that, Bridget sent us like a bunch more messages after that. Like just kept sending us these different events. It's like, all right, like I get it. They did a lot of different stuff. Okay.
And then Scott said, and Brian said, "Oh, I'd be good at this." I said, "Okay, come to my house later and mop my floors then." Because it was like I told you, there was like the electrician one, but then there was housekeeping. But I don't know. I find it amusing. I have no idea why. But we're not going to spend another podcast on that. So, Scott, why don't you go with your opening shift?
So Alex Steves and Tanner Janot were at the Bruins annual back to school event at TD Garden yesterday, Wednesday. I was not able to make it. I had meetings and also was still battling a cold that like hopefully people can't hear, but I think I'm just finally getting over it. Just randomly had like a 4-day cold in the middle of the summer. But did think there's some interesting stuff from Steve's just talking about not being happy with the way that his season ended. And feeling like he still has to prove himself going into this year. I did like this quote. This is from reading from the Boston Herald, Steve Conroy. He says, to be honest, the contract, meaning, the 2-year extension that he signed midway through last year, doesn't really help talking about like feeling like he's made it. He says, I don't feel like I've made it. I'll feel like I've made it when I'm a guy who never comes out of the lineup and is a real stable NHLer. And then he goes on to say, like, he does believe he's that caliber of player. He thinks that's something he can do. So I liked hearing that. It got me thinking, like, we focus so much on, hey, they have 10 defensemen. What's going to happen there? Like, does someone get traded? Do they end up on waivers? Like, how does that all shake out? It's kind of a similar thing up front that we probably just haven't spent as much time on. But, like, if you go through it, the only guys competing that we think could compete for forward spots on the opening night roster who could be sent down without waivers are Fraser Minton, who's a lock, right? Like, no one thinks he's going anywhere. And James Higgins, who I think we all hope makes the team. We all think he'll make the team. In theory, there's certainly a scenario where, maybe he doesn't run with a job, and a little bit of time in Providence to start the year is the way that goes. But everyone else, whether it's Sean Corrali, who we wonder, what his spot is, Alex Steves would need waivers. Mikey Asimon is still here. He would need to go through waivers. Lucas Reichel needs to clear waivers. Oh, the only Ivan does not need waivers. So the guy they got in the Fabian Lysell trade, who I don't rule out him battling for a spot. He's a guy. He played a bunch of NHL games for Colorado last year, so it's not like he's only an AHL guy. But there's just like, Matt Poitras still remains unsigned. When and if he signs, he would need waivers. And I think we all feel like he should get a real shot. If he's here, he should get a real shot to stick around and play NHL minutes. When you add it all up, it's like 17 forwards, and only 13 or 14 of them are going to be on the opening night rosters. So I'm curious, like, how this all shakes out and who of this group is actually part of the team early in the season and has a role. I look at it like, just to go my opinion here, like, Higgins should be there. He should play. Poitras should be there. He should play. Corrali, I'm fine with as an extra forward, right? Like, I want Poitras centering that line. Corrali can be veteran, locker room leader, come in, if they need help, need a defensive center for certain games or just to give someone a breather or whatever. And then that leaves all those other guys battling for maybe a 14th forward spot, if they even keep 14 forwards. So I remain intrigued by Lucas Reichel. I like his speed, skill set. He's still young. Whether he makes it is going to be up to him. Like, either he comes into camp and has a really good camp and forces their hand, or if he doesn't, he's probably a pretty easy cut. Alex Steves has the contract, but to his own point in this Herald article, has certainly not established himself as an NHL regular yet. So I don't think his spot is secure at all. Asimon, honestly, I'm surprised he's still here. I really thought he was getting moved this summer. Maybe he still does closer to or during training camp. But again, that's another guy who's whatever you think of him, is an established NHLer who's been around for a while. So just really curious how this all sorts out.
Yeah, and so mine and yours are very in the same vein. I was wanting to take it one step further and ask the question, which guy that is currently on the Bruins like cap projections on the roster towards the cap is the least likely to play a single game for the Bruins next season? Because I have thoughts. I think there are several guys who I don't know if they're on the team to start the year because they're traded. Are they not on the team because they didn't make it out of camp? And so there's several candidates I think here who could be in that extreme of like on the roster now, but for one of those two reasons, they're not. They don't play a single game with Boston next year, whether it be because they're in Providence or on another team altogether. There are certainly candidates. And then also like you're talking about which guys are going to have like solidified roles. I think that we can talk about that too, because I think there's a few guys on the team we haven't talked about too much this offseason that I'm like, I don't know if this guy is in the lineup every day or he's the extra defenseman. You know what I mean? Like there's still definitely things to be settled in the bottom parts of the lineup, whether that be the bottom, of the forward group or the D group, because currently in both roles they have too much on the books right now, and you cannot roster that many guys that they currently have. So I want to we'll circle back to this. We don't need to take forever in opening shifts, but I want you guys to think about which guy that's currently on the roster right now is least likely to play a single game for the Bruins this year.
Yeah, we like our depth. We got a good group of guys, and we're all going to come in, battle for spots in training camp, and makes people better. Iron sharpens iron. So we like our group, and injuries happen, and we like our group here. So anyway, in terms of that group, my question to you guys is: the Bruins do have a bit more than $5 million in cap space, so I'm just curious to the conversation that you guys are having. That's all to do with players that are currently here, right? The overabundance of death by depth that they have. Where's that $5 million plus in the cap space going to prior to opening night? How much of it? How little of it? Obviously, Scott mentioned Matt Poitras, but even then, I don't think he would be half of that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, it's just that's my question. Like we talked about what could be some PTO candidates, some UFAs that are still unsigned, and we went through that list before we started recording, and there's a couple of names where maybe for a contender, it's like, okay, maybe take a stab at that guy, but none of those names really seem to make sense, maybe to any of us really, in terms of the Bruins. So is there another trade to happen? I don't know. I just feel like we've been under this hope that there's other shoes to drop for the Bruins prior to opening night. And I guess it could still happen, but I'm starting to feel like I'd be more surprised if another shoe or two did drop than if it didn't. I don't know what else they could add to the back end. They already have 10 guys battling, if you include McAvoy when he comes back, and then obviously Frederic Brunet, who's establishing himself, and then up front, Scott, you mentioned, so maybe we can just pivot into the conversation, but like you mentioned some of the forwards that have to be put on waivers, and I mean Corrali, Acimont, Steves, I feel like 2, if not all of those guys would potentially clear. Maybe not Corrali just based on what he can bring to a locker room, but I could see Steve's clearing. I definitely would see Acimont clearing, even Reichel. So I don't know if they're just planning on waiving the guys that they need to in training camp, and if they go through and go to Providence, then all right, and if they get claimed, then that's what it is. Because I don't think any of us want to be in a situation where the Bruins are prioritizing, these types of players over ice time for a James Higgins. And that's not me sitting here saying that players don't have to earn it, but we have to look at this team with big picture lenses on. And I know it's a small lens world for Marco Sturm in training camp, but you have to do a little bit of both. And I think we all hope that that's what happens.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because there's also the just like people managing aspect of it where, Sean Corrali is such a respected veteran and leader. That's not to say you can't send him down to Providence. It's not to say that he wouldn't suck it up and handle it well, but like, it's a tough move to make. Like that would be uncomfortable for everyone involved. I don't see that, but you can't rule it out. I think of like Chris Wagner going down. That was one where there's a ton of respect and love all around, and no one really wanted that to happen. But I also think Wagner was even at a different point in his career than Corrali is. Like I don't think Corrali is all that close to the point where like he's like, oh, maybe maybe I'm in like an AHL, NHL fringe guy. Like I think he played every game last year. I'm sure he still looks at himself as an NHL regular. That would be tough. And then like Acimont again, I can tell you right now, like he wasn't happy sitting in the press box in the NHL. I can't imagine he's not going to be thrilled at all if he goes to Providence. And again, like that's not to say you don't do it, but I gotta imagine like you're trying to find a different home for him instead, right? Like just people managing, like you want to do right by some guys. So, but maybe there's just no interest. Maybe there isn't a different home for him. So
Right.
that's the $5 million in cap space. It's one of the reasons, along with just things I've heard, that like I've thought all along, and I've said it here, I've said it elsewhere, like in a perfect world, I don't think the offseason's over for Don Sweeney. I've always felt like there's more that he wants to do. And I think that involves clearing out even more salary first, specifically from the back end in the form of Yoki Haru and or Lorite. Those are both of them are making $3 million. I don't think either one of them is really a central part of the Bruins' plans for this season. I think Don Sweeney would like to move one or both of those out, and then you're talking about $8+ million in cap space, which sets you up for like another meaningful move. I do think if the summer had totally gone the way Don Sweeney wanted, I think something like that would have happened. One of those guys would be out in a trade, and there'd be someone else coming in, probably a forward, but maybe a defenseman, real impact guy, another like $6 to $7 million player. I think things just haven't lined up, right? Like you want to move one of those guys, but you don't just want to give them away. You don't want to eat salad. You don't want to eat part of the cap hit. So that hasn't happened. So then the second move doesn't happen. Who knows if that second move was even out there anyways? You have to find the right trade. But what might end up happening is they just go into the season with more cap space than they've had in a while, which I also think is not the end of the world. Like you're not all in right now. This isn't your year to go, spend every last penny and go try to win a Stanley Cup. Like you're not there yet. So if you keep some money in the bank, I actually think that's kind of smart. Like I've never supported spending to the cap just to say you spend to the cap.
Yeah, you've been consistent with that, Scott, for sure. And like, you mentioned managing people, right? And you're not wrong to mention that, right? But at the same time, one of the last things you said, teams might not want to trade a 5th rounder or a 4th rounder for Mikey Eyssimont. They just might not care. They might have their own guy to plug in there. Sean Kuraly, I'm with you. Like I think if you can move on from an Eyssimont, and you put Steves on, it all comes down to what do you want to do with Matt Poitras? Like if you want Matt Poitras to be in this fold next year, like he would have to clear waivers. I don't think he would clear waivers, but I think these other guys would. And then it's like you bring up the feelings, and again, I agree with it. That's a part of business. But this is kind of the other side of the coin of signing 3 or 4 depth guys last offseason, right? You brought in Tanner Jeannot. We like that. That's fine. He's good, for what he does. You already had Mark Kaslick. We like him. You brought in Kuraly because I think the locker room needed it, right? And then but I always question, did you have to bring in Steves and Eyssimont and this guy? Like, I'm not saying that, I'm not crucifying them for doing it, but I always felt that they brought in at least one too many of those guys. Like they brought in flyers on Blumel and Steves because maybe those guys could pop because they were prolific AHL scorers. But we all know that doesn't make you a prolific NHL scorer. So the fact that they're stuck now, and I don't say stuck like they don't like the players, but I mean, now you got to worry about Eysimont's feelings or Steve's feelings if they go, well, who Don brought them in. And oh, by the way, he signed Steves to an extension mid-season. So it's like, whose fault is this? It's I agree with what you're saying, Scott. But it's kind of like this is the bed you made. Now you have to lay in it. You brought in some depth guys at a time when your team's transitioning because you wanted to help out the culture. Great. But now you have younger kids, and if you're prioritizing, not putting Mikey Eyssimont on waivers, or hell, even Sean Kuraly, who to your point is an everyday 4th liner, but he could be an extra guy. But if nobody wants to trade for Kuraly, you got to choose between him and Poitras. To me, it sucks. But this is the bed that Don Sweeney's made. Now you got to lay in it and figure it out.
Yeah, and I think a term you used earlier, Scott, was like, is Corrali an everyday player? Well, he played every game last year. So there was only 3 guys on the team that played every game last year, and he was one of them. So I think he's not somebody that he's certainly, I would question whether or not he cleared waivers. And I also think that for the purposes of like just trying to like think the way they think, he's too valuable to send down completely. Even if your decision was to bring Poitras up, I think that the Corrali backup plan would still be there. So to keep him in case there's struggles that Poitras can't handle, and there would always probably be a sharing of that role if one or the other one was struggling, if that's the direction that they went, I think. And then to your point, Brian, about, you know, they brought in too many people. What do they do now? That's where my question comes from, right? I think it started in the back of my head when it was the first day of free agency, when they bring in Clifton and Borgen, and we go, okay, well, those 2 guys, if they're everyday players, then who's not, right? Like then is Lorai or Jokiharju gone? And then with Eyssimont too. Like if I want to ask you guys a question, we can answer it now. From my opening shift, who is the person that's currently on their cap that is least likely to play a single game for the Bruins this coming season?
It's 2 for me, so I guess maybe I'm cheating a little bit, but
Not allowed, Scott. Sorry. Nope.
One we've already discussed, but Eyssimont up front, Jokiharju on defense.
Yeah.
I still think those are the two most likely to move, because honestly, I think they're guys that the Bruins would just give away. Like if they get anything at all for them, you move them. I know Don Sweeney likes to have his depth, but it doesn't seem to me like either one of them are really in their plans for this year. I think if they had gotten any decent offer, either one would already be gone. I could still see either one moving. Like all it takes is for one team out there to get into camp and realize, yeah, you know, we don't have as much on the right side of our defense as we thought, or, you know, we could use a veteran bottom 6 guy. And hey, Bruins, will you give us Eyssimont for a 6th or 7th? And Don Sweeney probably says yes. Like, so I'd circle those 2. I guess Eyssimont, because he has the lower cap hit, in theory is easier to move. So if I have to narrow it down to one, I'll say Eyssimont with Jokiharju a close second.
No notes. Same 2 in my mind. And you know, just to reiterate here, and let me know if I'm forgetting somebody, because I very much could be. But again, to this Corrali conversation, because Bridget, you're right. Like I think in a perfect world, you would have Matt Poitras in this top 12 somehow. And yes, that might technically move Corrali out of the top 12, but he's still there as like your first extra forward, your locker room guy, your veteran guy. But then it's like, okay, but you have to do something with Steves and Reichel. So like right now, your forwards, your top 12 forwards, as things stand, as we currently expect them to be, unless things change. But you have JJ Peterka, Pavel Zacha, David Pastrnak, Casey Middlestad, Elias Lindholm, Morgan Geekie, James Higgins, Fraser Minton, Marat Khusnutdinov, Tanner Jeannot, Sean Corrali, Mark Kastelik. So again, and those weren't my preferred lines. I was just listing off names. So if you want Matt Poitras, and like if you elect to go for Sean Corrali full time, then you know you could still technically sign Poitras, and like him and Corrali are your extra forward. You know, they battle it out all year, but then you still have to expose Reichel to waivers and Steves to waivers. And again, this is where I'm saying if I'm forgetting somebody, let me know. Eyssimont, right? Eyssimont, we just talked about him. So it's like you have Steves, Poitras, Reichel, Eyssimont on the outside looking in, with Sean Corrali penciled in as your 4th line center. Now you could do Corrali and one of those guys as your 12th and 13th forwards. And I didn't even mention like a Don Zlashmelis, but due to his injury, I feel like he's somebody who they'll give reps to in Providence. No problems there to start. So this isn't us piling on Sean Corrali. This is us looking at their roster and saying, hey, if you would like to go for Corrali and Steves, then you're exposing Matt Poitras to waivers, or you're just not signing him. In which case, talk about bad asset management, right? If you just let this kid go somewhere else, you don't trade him, you don't. So they got to figure these things out.
At some point, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, Sweeney did mention that they're going to sign. I mean, obviously things could change, but he had in one of his press conferences said, "Oh, they're going to get that done or whatever." If you take him at his word, but I do want to bring up
for Poitras. You mean
for Poitras?
Yeah, I don't. Trying to remember. I don't know if he like explicitly said we're going to get something done, but he's definitely talked about Poitras like being part of their plans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. He said something about in the same vein of him and Brunet, who I also wanted to mention right now because, like, okay, could Brunet be somebody who plays a significant amount of games, or is he gonna play 0 or 2 games with the Bruins this year? You know what I mean? Like, because some of these guys, it could be they barely play with the Bruins or don't play with the Bruins because they're stuck in Providence. And Brunet's another guy, and Jordan Harris, another guy to add to this conversation, because both of those guys, one of those guys, they're not going to start in Boston. I very, very doubt that both those guys I just said are in Boston to start the season. Maybe one or the other, but just by the pure logjam of it, I don't think both will be. So, like, is Brunet going to be a guy that is a regular, or is he going to be a guy that plays maybe 2 games because somebody got injured and he came up and then he got sent right back down?
Yeah, I mean, the way Don Sweeney's talked about Frederic Brunet, to me, sounds like someone who's on the team to start the year. Like, he would have to go through waivers. That's one where, like, I don't know if Brunet gets claimed on waivers or not. That'd be really interesting. Like, there's a chance you sneak him through, but that's not the way Don Sweeney's talked about him. Like, he's straight up said, like, Brunet's probably gonna get a shot to play NHL games this year. And it's like, all right, well, to me that means he's making the team out of camp. Like, not we're gonna risk losing him for nothing, and then maybe we call him up later in the year.
I don't think that's worth the risk, by the way.
Yeah, neither do I, honestly. Like, at some point, these guys that you've had marinating in Providence, like, you have to give them a shot. Again, like, if you don't think they're NHLers, then you should have moved them earlier while they had value. Like, you have to be able to identify which of your guys are going to be NHLers and which ones aren't, which ones you're willing to move on from. You just lost Fabian Lysell for a 14th, 15th forward. Like, Ivan, not a bad player, useful to have in your organization, but not a difference maker. That happened because you just held on to Lysell too long, hoping that he might finally break through and do what you want him to do, and he never did. So then you moved him for very little. Well, now you're kind of staring at the same thing with Poitras and Brunet, where it's like, all right, either you see them as NHLers or you don't. And if you don't, then they should have already been moved by now.
Well, and Frederic Brunet, in his circumstance too, he's done everything that they've asked him to do. He's developing exactly how they want him to develop. So what message does that send to him, to your organization, to younger players? Hey, you come into your organization, you work your ass off for 3 years in Providence or whatever it was, 2.5, 3 years, and you develop the way we ask you to. And now we're going to waive you for some, 27-year-old journeyman. It makes no sense to me. Like, I look at this Bruins decor right now, and you have Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, Will Borgen, Connor Clifton, Mason Lohrei, Jonathan Aspero, Henry Jokiharju, Jordan Harris, Frederic Brunet. If we're talking about the first 6 games without McAvoy, Bridget, to your question, right, is Brunet somebody who gets 1 or 2 games and that's it? I think they're planning to give him a real look, and I think you have to look at the 4-game preseason sample as him playing every game. And then you have a 6-game sample without Charlie McAvoy. So when you combine those, fractions of games, it's a 10-game sample size. And you have to make a decision after 4. So I feel like you have Hampus Lindholm, Zadorov, Borgen, Clifton. I think those 4 without McAvoy in the lineup, I think they're definitely playing. Right. And then it comes down to who's your 5-6 without McAvoy. As long as, assuming that there's no trades before then, I think you have to talk about probably Lohrei being one of the first top 6 to get a crack, you would imagine. And then it comes down to, for me, it's like Frederic, Brunet, and Jonathan Aspero, and Henry Jokiharju, and Jordan Harris. But you only have to make a decision on like 3 of those guys, because if you, let's just say you have Lindholm, Zadorov, Borgen, Clifton, Brunet. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Lohrei 6. This is without McAvoy, right? Then you have Lohrei 6. Then you have probably one of them as an extra defenseman, so you don't have to make a decision on one of Aspero, Jokiharju, or Harris, and you have to probably make a decision on the other 2. So I could see them keeping Hampus, Lindholm, Zadorov, Borgen, Clifton, Brunet, Lohrei, and then Aspero out of camp. And then they probably waive Harris and he goes down to Providence. I think that would be the case, unless, someone has an injury on the back end. But I think that there's a good chance he would clear. And then if you can't trade Jokiharju, then you put him on waivers. And if somebody wants to take him, great. If not, it is what it is. You're down in Providence. It's a numbers game. And then when Charlie comes back, if Brunet is playing well and Lohrei is playing well, well, one of those guys, or Clifton's your extra defenseman, and you probably waive Jonathan Aspero, and you hope that he gets through, and he probably does.
Well, I think that Aspero, I don't think that he's very high on that list to waive, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know about you, Scott, but like once he came up, he was a fixture.
Well, who are you pitting him against, though? Who are the options? Who are the options to waive? I mean, Lohrei would not clear waivers.
No, he wouldn't clear.
So,
But I think they like, what I'm saying is I think they like Aspero over Lohrei. So like if you don't want to put him on waivers, then you do have to find a trade. But like I think that they value Aspero at this point for what he does in Sturm's system.
I was gonna say who's they?
Sturm. Definitely
Yeah,
Sturm.
I was gonna say I think Sturm likes Aspero more than Lohrei because he sees him as a better fit. I think there's people in the organization who, and I don't know if this is Don Sweeney or not, but like I think there's probably people in the organization who still believe in Lohrei and would want to see him play more, whereas Aspero, like, great story last year, but ultimately like fairly limited upside, I think, in terms of what he will be moving forward. So I mean, there might be room for both of them, but it does create an interesting debate where it's like, if Lohrai's still here, doesn't he kind of have to have a role, or he's at least on the team, right? Like, to your point, you're not waiving him and losing him for nothing. So I don't know. And one other thing here, and Brian, you framed it right, like going through all the names that way, just to note, the Bruins don't get an extra roster spot while McAvoy is suspended. McAvoy still counts against the 23-man limit. So it's not like, oh, he's suspended, they can keep 8 other defensemen for 6 games. No, like chances are it's probably 7 other defensemen. Maybe you can rotate through, but like,
good to know. You
don't free up a roster spot.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, Bridget, like obviously this is a pro Aspero podcast. I think there is a distinction though between who the Bruins value more, or who Marco Sturm values more, or who likes better, and who would have a better likelihood of clearing on waivers, right? And so that there's nuance to it, but yeah, like I said, and honestly, because of Lohrai's asset, if you were to waive him and somebody took him, it's like you should have traded him for something, right? So I think Harris clears. Jokiharju
clears.
I think he clears just because of the contract. I don't think anyone's taking that contract on.
Yeah, it would just depend. I think the only way he doesn't clear is if somebody around the league loses the top 6 guy for an extended amount of time during camp or during the summer, and they don't mind having him on the books. But I agree with you guys. So in any event, in terms of Brunet, I do think the Bruins are going to give him a solid look. And when it comes to Mason Lohrei, if Frederic Brunet can be who the Bruins and who many Bruins fans hope he can be, I think it makes Mason Lohrei expendable, not because they have the exact same offensive ceiling, but I just think Frederic Brunet is, first of all, he's not a small kid. I think he's like 6'3". So he's shorter than Lohrei, but he's still a pretty big boy, and he can play both sides of the game. Obviously, it remains to be seen at the top level how consistent he can do that and excel at it, but it's something that the Bruins want to see. So, yeah, the Bruins they don't lack depth in NHL options, but they lack some high end options, and they have to make some decisions on these smaller options. And like Frederic Brunet, Matt Poitras, these guys going by the wayside. What are we doing?
Well, and that's like Trent Whitfield. When I went there, was it 2 weeks ago now? When he was introduced as Providence's head coach, he got elevated. So he knows the guys. He's known the guys in the system since they got there. Had basically called Poitras, Brunet, and DiPietro NHLers. Like they're NHL caliber guys. They just need he used for Poitras, he said he needs his runway, but he's an NHL guy. For Brunet, he said he was our best defenseman from the beginning to the end of the season last year, and he's NHL ready. And then obviously DiPietro of those guys is going to get a chance because they moved out Korpisalo. So he's going to be playing behind Swayman. But for Brunet, it's like, I still just have trouble seeing the runway for him. Like that it's almost like they painted themselves into a corner where there's no room for somebody like him to kind of spread his wings and get a real chance, because that now you're just trying to guard against losing somebody for nothing on waivers, or, giving up on somebody like Lohrei when other people might question, why would you do that? So yeah, I mean, I think one of Lohrei or Jokiharju needs to get traded. If the Bruins are managing their assets correctly, the plan should not be to have both of those guys on the roster to start the season, because then you are putting yourself in this waivers situation. But it depends how much they still believe in Lohrei, right? And then they have to choose who's lesser on the totem pole than him in terms of what they think somebody can be, because we're talking about somebody who's now, he's in his mid-20s, and is he still developing, or is this who he is? That's what you kind of have to decide. And then if Brunet is somebody you're like, no, he's ready in his development, like it's time for him to get the chance, then you have to make him part of your plans rather than somebody like Jokiharju or Lohrei.
Yeah, I mean, like it makes sense. Say Don Sweeney, Bruins management, to start the summer, going into the offseason, they're thinking, hey, here's kind of what the plan looks like in our head. And maybe the pairings change, but Lindholm, McAvoy, Zadorov, Borgen, Brunet, Clifton, Aspero is our seventh defenseman. And they think Jokiharju and Lohrei, we move in one way or another. Like then the plan makes sense. Then you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, that's how they envisioned Brunet getting minutes, and that's why they went out and got Borgen and Clifton. But Lohrei and Jokiharju are still here, so that if that was part of the plan, or at least was something that they were open to doing, that part just hasn't happened yet. So it still could. We kind of hit August, and it's like movement all around the league. Nothing's really happening. Maybe it picks up again at training camp. But if those guys are here, then, like, in the sake of fairness and just trying to build the best team, like, you do have to give them a shot to compete for a roster spot. Like, you do have to, if they're here, even if Mason Lohrei maybe wasn't in your plans 2 months ago, you have to give him a chance to win a job. I mean, if he goes through training camp and he's just better than Frederic Brunet, it would be really hard to be like, well, we really want to give Brunet a shot, so tough luck, Mason. Like, we're done. It's like, no, if guys are here and they're competing for spots, then you have to be open to the possibility of them winning spots.
To that point, can I bring up something that I haven't really talked about on here, because it's a minuscule thing, but it's something that's kind of rubbed me the wrong way over the last, call it month or so, since 5-6 weeks since free agency started. Connor Clifton. I love Connor Clifton. I love me some Cliffy hockey. I live for the palpitations he gives me when he goes end to end. He works his ass off. Like, there's nothing not to like about him as a player. So don't take this as I don't like the free agency signing, because I do like him over Yoki Haru, and I do like him as a bottom pair guy, extra defenseman. And I understand that Connor Clifton as a player, like all players, want to be everyday players. So him vocalizing this, I don't even begrudge him for that. You should want to be an everyday guy. I just hope that Don Sweeney and Marco Sturm don't necessarily feel the same way, because Connor was mentioning, his time in Pittsburgh, and he was talking about how, it was tough to kind of get into his rhythm because of his, in and out of the lineup nature with Pittsburgh. And it sounded like he wasn't really too thrilled with some of the coaching decisions, and he wants to be an everyday guy. I get that. But that insinuates that like he and Don Sweeney had conversations before. Hey, Cliffy, Dan Muse doesn't know what he's doing. Marco's going to play every game, and you're going to be our sixth guy. Like, I'm not saying that happened, but like that's kind of the nature of like I wanted to sign in Boston because I'm going to get that everyday opportunity here. But he had that in Pittsburgh. He just whatever, like they want to give somebody else a look. It's not the nature of a sixth defenseman to come in and like expect everyday play, because a bottom pair guy is a what have you done for me lately position. So all I'm saying is that Connor Clifton wants to be an everyday guy, as he should. But Marco Sturm, Don Sweeney, they can't be making promises to him at that position. You're the sixth guy, maybe the seventh. And I just hope that Connor Clifton, as much as I like him as a player and a person off the ice, I hope he's understanding that what you went through in Pittsburgh last year, that could happen in Boston again this year. It should if your play isn't there. Like, there shouldn't be any guarantees for anybody, let alone a sixth defenseman. So because this ties into this conversation about the Loris and the Asperos and the Frederic Brunets and the Jordan Harrises of the world. It's like Connor Clifton shouldn't have that third right shot defenseman spot locked. Over Yoki Haru, yeah, I want him over Henry, but like over these guys, no, I'm good. And I acknowledge that Clifton should be a top six guy, especially when McAvoy is out for the first 6 games. And I like Connor Clifton even when they're healthy as their third pair right shot defenseman. But I also like him as their 7th defenseman if need be. So I just hope that that's all understood, and that he's not going into Boston under false pretenses of, well, it's not going to be what happened to Pittsburgh last year. Because you know what, Connor? It could be. That's what hockey is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Like, they absolutely should not have made any guarantees. I'll also say I'd be surprised if they did. Just from what I've heard over the years, like, I don't think that's usually how Don Sweeney operates. Certainly not with guys towards the bottom of the roster.
But
I don't think it's how.
Didn't it sound in his voice, Scott? Scott, didn't it sound like in his voice and his rhetoric like that he was like optimistic that there was going to be a change for Pittsburgh? That's why he wanted to come back to Boston. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but he sounded like a happy puppy.
I mean, I think he has been told he'll get an opportunity, and like is probably in their plans, and that's why he signed. And I think that's all accurate. But
yeah,
I'd be surprised if it went as far as like, yeah, we'll guarantee that you're going to be an everyday player.
Okay.
I think it was probably more like, hey, we have an obvious opening on our third pairing on the right side. We think you'd be a good fit. Here's what we want to do. And Clifton says, yep, sign me up. But I think saying we have this opening, we have an opportunity, and we think you're a good fit is a little different than, hey, you're going to play every game here.
Well, so do you think now maybe Pittsburgh they weren't interested in bringing him back, but you don't think that's the same opportunity that presents itself to him in Pittsburgh if the money was all equal and the interest was there too? Maybe it wasn't interesting. Maybe they weren't interested in Clifton anymore. But
yeah, I mean, I would guess they didn't offer the same as what the Bruins did. But
yeah,
I don't know that for a fact, but that'd be my guess. I mean, he said he was happy with his play down the stretch, and he did play more down the stretch, and then they got to playoffs, and he was kind of in and out again, and obviously they lost that first round series to Philly. But I'll also say, like, yes, obviously he wants to play every day. I do think it can be, not that you ever get used to it or accept it, but I think, say that is how this year goes, where he comes out of the lineup at some point. I do think it can be easier to handle that kind of the second time. You know, when you're a veteran player, I think the first time you hit that, you know, where you're out of the lineup and you're not a regular anymore and you've been a regular your whole career, I think the first time that happens is always going to be the toughest. And then if and when it happens again, you're probably better prepared for it, and you probably handle it a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Clifton that sparked this idea in the first place, because him coming in makes it so somebody's gonna come out, right? And I was watching the videos he was doing where he was kind of doing like the man on the street outside of TD Garden and interviewing people, asking them trivia questions where the answer was all Connor Clifton. But it made me think, like, you know, how often is he going to play? I mean, he's getting paid like a bottom pair guy. The only guy getting paid less than him of the 8 that are, you know, the highest on the totem pole is Aspero. Clifton's contract was 2 by 2.25 for a cap hit. And then Laura and Yoki Haru both make more than him. So he is getting paid like the bottom of the D currently, right? Like, if the guys, even if you want to extend it to Harrison, Brunet, like, he's above them, but those guys are the ones that are on the fringe. So he isn't getting paid like a guy that necessarily has to play every day. Borgen, they have him 4 years, 4.1 million for his cap hit. So like, he's getting paid more. He's somebody that's gonna be a middle pair guy, it seems like, even though you probably would have liked to do a little bit better there in terms of who you brought in. Instead of bringing in one clear upgrade, they bring in Clifton and Borgen, and I don't know if they're just gonna hope that it pieces together in some way. But Clifton's the one that sparked the idea, because he either isn't gonna play a lot or he's gonna take a spot from Laura or Yoki Haru. You understand? Like, that's
right.
That's what kind of got me thinking, like, is it Clifton that's the odd man out? Because like, he is paid less than those two guys. Like, he is technically, by like a cap expectation or by the team's like monetary value on him, lesser than those two guys. Though I do think I would much rather see him than Yoki Haru, that's for sure. And yeah, I don't know. And also it brought to mind, like, he didn't have a full season last year, not because he was injured, but because he was out of the lineup for chunks of last year with Pittsburgh. So it's like, is he the kind of guy who doesn't belong in the lineup every day at this point? Like, that's something that's a big question mark still. So how many games he plays is certainly could be anything from, you know, the full season to, all right, he's playing 40 games. I don't know, just making up a number, but I do think he's here, right? Like, he's not the one that I see being like straight up gone.
No.
Obviously, you wouldn't have just brought him in. So it's safe to say, like, him and Borgen, those guys, those aren't the ones that are the players in the question that I asked, because they were purposefully brought here. Otherwise, they would have just left them alone. But yeah, I mean, and I never answered my question, but to me, I do not understand the fit of Asemont the most of anything. And of the D, I also agree. Yoki Haru is probably, I've never been all that high on him. I apologize to him. He's a nice guy. So he's somebody you can take $3 million off the books, even if it's just somebody taking the contract, then that's fine, right?
Like I said,
so it'll be
the
frustrating.
problem is like, you might not take $3 million. Like, it's possible no one wants that contract and you're just stuck with it, which is, it just brings back to, like, and we all questioned it at the time. It's like, what was the thinking? Like, why did they feel the need to sign that contract? just because there was nothing else available, like
Yeah.
that just should not be a motivator for like, well, let's give him 3 years, $3 million a
Yeah.
year.
It felt like
Like,
1 year would have been fine. It would have sufficed, right? Like a 1 year deal probably.
I mean, he
would have
probably doesn't sign that. I'm sure he had more of a market, but like, you don't have to be the one
Oh,
to
well.
overpay him. Like,
Could have seen Brunet sooner then, I guess. Or I know Harris was hurt, but like, yeah, like they could have.
I wonder how that conversation go. Like, I wonder if Cam Neely, what he says to Don about that. Like, hey, Don, like, why did we give this guy a $9 million contract? And now, like, a year later, we're immediately going on and replacing him. Like, here's Will Borgen, who's on a $16 million contract. And, oh, we're also going to give Connor Clifton a $4.5 million contract. It's like, wait, so, yeah, like, we're already done with that guy that we have locked up for 2 more years? Don, what happened there?
Can I want to give you guys, in a perfect world, with this group of guys internally, what I would like to see on the back end. Like, this is a grouping I would say, okay, you know what, Don? You did the best with what you could with these guys prior to opening night. Well, this has McAvoy in it, but regardless. So Hampus Lindholm, Charlie McAvoy, Nikita Zadorov, Will Borgen, Frederic Brunet, Connor Clifton. Those are your 6, right? And then Jonathan Aspro is your extra defenseman. Jordan Harris, I wouldn't hate if he was the extra defenseman, but one of those 2 guys is your extra defenseman. The other guy, you waive him, hope he clears, goes down to Providence. You trade or waive Yoki Haru. If nobody wants him in a trade, put him on waivers. And if he clears and he goes down to Providence, and there's some cap relief, I would imagine. Or if somebody takes him, not your problem anymore. The big one here is Mason Lohrei, right? And I just can't help but feel if he's not a part of your long-term plans, he's on the final year of his deal. And if you're not going to play him much as a regular guy, you're going to taint his value. So tying this into the forward conversation, the one wild card that I'm still curious about, and I'm not saying I would love this entirely, but depending on the return, I would. The big wild card to me is there a trade out there later on this summer where part of the package leaving Boston is Mason Lohrei and Matt Poitras? Because if you can't find a fit for Poitras for one reason or the other, who, by the way, is yet to be signed, I would not want the Bruins giving up on Poitras. I like Matt Poitras. I certainly like him over the forwards that we talked about earlier on in this podcast. But if he and Lohrei as a package and maybe something else can help you bring back a significant piece, and you don't see these 2 as a long-term fixture in your forward core, because honestly, we're talking about Matt Poitras trying to crack the lineup right now, and Sean Corrali's in the way. How about long-term, where maybe Pavel Zacha's around, maybe he's not. Elias Lindholm is still under contract till he's not. James Higgins, Dean Letourneau, Fraser Minton, 3 players up the middle that you hope, the Bruins hope are centers. Maybe one's a wing, maybe 2, but there's a logjam. Matt Poitras might break the lineup as a 4th-line center, but he shouldn't be a 4th-line center his whole career. So I've always found a bit of a struggle to see Matt Poitras long-term, because the reality is the ceiling for Minton and Higgins and Letourneau is higher than Matt's. And that's not me coming down on the player, but you hope that those players reach their ceilings and Matt Poitras reaches his, and that those players' ceilings are a lot higher. So, in my opinion, if Matt Poitras is your 1st-line center in 3 years instead of Higgins or Letourneau, it's like, well, then the more important prospects failed you. So the wild card to be this offseason is, do the Bruins find a way to move Lohrei and Poitras? And if you can get something for those guys, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. I think there probably been talks, at least, involving both of those guys, whether it's in the same deal or separate deals. And I think, I think what Don Sweeney would love to do is move those guys for some sort of roster upgrade, in like a deal, part of a package for an impact player. What I don't know, and probably you probably don't do this with Poitras, but maybe with Lori, do you get to a point where you just trade him for a draft pick? Like that's something I don't think the Bruins have been open to this point. I think what Don Sweeney wants to do is include him in a package for a better player, use some of that cap space that he has. But what I wonder is like, does it ever get to a point where, I mean, what can you get for Mason Lori for a pick? Like, can you get a second rounder for him? And do you take that if you can do that? I don't really think the Bruins have gone down that road yet of, hey, we're just going to trade Mason Lori for a draft pick. But I do wonder if it shifts to that at some point where it's like, okay, we've hung on. The package we wanted never really materialized. Now we're showing up to training camp. We don't really see him as part of our future. If someone gives you a second round pick, do you take it at that point? I think I would, but I wonder where they would be.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, obviously the rumors were they were talking. Well, this was confirmed. They were talking to Rasmus Anderson to try and bring him in earlier this season as an upgrade on defense, and the rumored package was something that included Lori. So they obviously tried to put him in a package to get a roster player that's an upgrade on the back end. That didn't come to fruition because he wouldn't sign an extension. So there was attempts made. I'm sure that wasn't even the only one. Maybe there's still attempts being made currently in the summer, in the off season, to try to do something there. But at this point, your defense is full. So are you really trying to package him for something on D now? Like what position are you filling here with this? So yeah, maybe it is a draft pick. That's a second round pick. I think you'd be happy with. Anything less than that, I don't think you would. But anyway, did you guys have any other thoughts on that conversation about the guys who could play the whole season or could play nothing? Because we do have two mailbag questions about. Well, they both involve Kuzi and others, but we wanted to get to those before the end.
Yeah, no, just one closing thought for me. It's just something that is popping to my mind. Like Matt Poitras to me is like his the way he plays, I do think is a style of play and a hockey IQ that Marco Sturm would envision being a part of his systems. Mason Lori to me and Henry Jokiharju, the common denominator that they have is I just don't think that when you look at them compared to the other guys, McAvoy, Zadorov, Borgen, Clifton, even Brunet, who like Brunet can, he has a physical element to his game. I wouldn't say he's a physical player, but he has that element to his game. Hampus Lindholm, not a physical guy, but he's been around the block. Jokiharju and Laura, I just feel like in the defensive system that the Bruins are trying to, play nowadays, where it's a lot of man on man and sometimes zone, you can't be an easy pass. Right. You have to be physical and like there's a lot of one-on-one battles. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're talking about Laura and Jokiharju as defensemen that maybe Sturm doesn't love in his system. And they're both kind of relatively soft players. And, Laura can skate, but I don't think it's a coincidence that's my last comment on that. But yeah, Bridget, if you want to get to those mailbag questions.
All right, here we go. We're going to hit 2 here. We do have others left, but we don't have time for those. We will get to them at some other point in the offseason for sure.
But we'll get to them next week, episode 600. We're going to mix in mailbag questions.
Yes, we are. Episode 600, which we still don't know exactly when we're dropping because we have Jimmy Fun stuff Monday and Tuesday. So we'll see. We'll update on that. We'll keep you posted. But here are the questions for today. So we got an email from Rockford. Rockford said, is it chiseled in stone that both Kastelik and Jeannot need to be on the same line? Why not move Kastelik up to the third line and to support Khusnutdinov at third line center? Maybe Poitras at fourth line center with Jeannot, maybe spread some speed and PV in the bottom 6. So PV P-V. I'm not sure.
Piss and vinegar.
Okay, all right, there we go. He just didn't want to write it out, I guess. So does Jeannot and Kaslik splitting up give you any more flexibility to get some time for Poitras, essentially? And does it help with Khusnutdinov as well, giving him a little bit of extra toughness?
Well, they could certainly be split up, but I don't think they have to be on the same line. I do think Marco Sturm clearly likes having them on the same line, whether that was with Corrali in the middle for most of the season, or even the stretches earlier in the year when it was Minton between those two at one point. Poitras, the 2 games he played, he had those 2 guys on his wing. I do think Sturm likes that idea of like that kind of being an identity line, in particular on the wings. I would also push back against. I don't see Khusnutdinov being a center on this team, at least not out of the gates.
No, he's saying Kaslik centering a line that has Kuzi there.
Oh,
yeah.
I wonder who. I guess I wonder like who's moving off a center in this scenario, because like Zaka, Minton, Elias Lindholm, maybe even James Higgins. I don't know. I guess I don't see Kaslik moving to the middle either. I think he stays as a right wing, but you could split them up. But I would bet Sturm has them together to start.
Yeah, he likes the identity of the keeping that group of tough guys, I won't say, together. And that's probably why it's harder for there to be a spot for Poitras there on a 4th line if the identity needs to stay that, grinder kind of in your face line. Poitras doesn't fit that bill, obviously, but if you still had 2 of those guys with him, it's still a pretty tough line with a little bit of extra skill and speed if Poitras were there. But yeah, so Khusnutdinov, does he need a guy next to him that's tougher? I feel like he's not the kind of guy that gets targeted necessarily. I think more it'd be like, oh, let's protect Higgins, who might have a little bit more of a target on his back, just being young, small, and a top guy that people know. He doesn't have the experience, so they're going to give him his hits when they can, and try to throw him off his game. And he's going to be, all those young guys go through it when they come into the league. The talented young players have a little bit of a target on their back. So I don't know. I've never thought of Khusnutdinov as a guy that needs a little bit of protecting. I feel like he just swims around everybody.
His battle meter is as high as anybody's in the team. Like he'll go into a battle with 3 opponents. So it's not for him. It's you're more so just talking about his lack of size, which I'm not really worried about, because I never really worried about that with Brad Marchand. I'm not calling Khusnutdinov Brad Marchand, but there are certain players where if their battle effort is constantly
Brad Marchand could only be so lucky, yes, to be compared to
right. There are certain players whose effort is always at 110. I don't have to worry about anything in terms of, because they outwork people, right? So in terms of spreading out Kaslik and Jeannot, I understand the thought process. Unless one of those 2 guys had 50-point capability, I'm not doing it, because the league is changing. It's not a very physically demanding, intimidating league anymore. You have a couple of guys, but for the most part, it's a skill league, it's a speed league, and it's a youthful league. So I'm not worried about putting enforcers up throughout the lineup anymore. Again, if you could have Kaslik or Jeannot capable of 30 goals and 50-55 points like Milan Lucic back in the day, that's one thing. If Milan Lucic was a 20-point guy, he would never would have been with Krejci and Horton, right? So you have to have a certain level of offensive ability and instincts, and I think that for 4th liners, those guys have it. But you got to have your skilled players surrounded by other guys that can keep up with them mentally and instinctually, and certainly in terms of speed and skill. So I think that the Tanner Jeannot Mark Kaslik combination honestly is one of the few things that I'm more certain of right now with this Bruins team. It's more so who's should be between them, because we saw Fraser Minton last year do really well with those two guys flanking his wings. And that sounds sexual. I don't know why I said it like that, but
No, it didn't.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Flanking his
I mean,
wings,
it does now. But
now it does. I just
Hey,
put it out
wait,
there.
it didn't in my mind until you said it, I guess. Like,
Redact that. That never happened. In a similar way, I could see Matt Poitras doing well there. I think Sean Corrali, again, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. He's a good locker room guy, good veteran guy. I found that line to be underwhelming in terms of speed last year. And I don't know. I think that Kaslik and Jeannot, ironically enough, I think they could do well with a little bit more speed and skill between them. But I don't think they need to be up and down the lineup right now. No.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the other part of it too. Is like if you go through and fill in the top 9, I just think that the Bruins have 6 wingers to put in those top on the first 3 lines that just have more skill and offensive upside than Kaslik and Jeannot. Like, just go through it. Pastrnak, Peterka, Geeky, Mittelstadt, Khusnutdinov, and Hagens if he starts on wing. It's like that there are your top 6 wings that go in your top 3 lines, however you want to sort them out. Like I'm not dropping any of those guys to the 4th line.
Yeah, and we didn't get to see this line a lot because Hagens obviously wasn't with the team for most of the season, but the new kids line of Hagens, Khusnutdinov, and Mitten was an entertaining line in the short amount of time they were together because of their speed and that's something that I think Khusnutdinov would thrive in more is playing with guys like that keep up with him and that make themselves available and can score. Because he's a guy who digs the puck out and he can get it over to Hagens for a shot or somehow get it out front to Mitten in front of the net or I feel like that combination is something that would benefit him in his point production. And then the other obvious one is when he plays with Pastrnak. So if you were to play with Pastrnak, like that's obviously more beneficial to him, and I think he can. In fact, my preferred starting lineup does involve him playing with Pastrnak and Peterka being on the second line. But those are the combinations that benefit him more than having someone like Kaslik next to him. Because I don't think he needs protection. I think he needs speed to play alongside. So with that, we will get to our other koozie question, which is from Michael on YouTube. He said, I know that this is a koozie-friendly podcast. That's correct. Are we all sleeping on his potential to develop into a center that challenges for a top 6 minutes? This team has a lot of guys who can play that position, Corrali, Mittelstadt, etc. Might he grow into a contender for one of those spots?
Well, I certainly liked him last year when he did play center. This is an unfair comment, but when it comes to being a top 2 center, I can't help but notice. I don't know. I feel like being that undersized may make a difference. Like I don't know. I don't question his battle factor, but I just envision him going up against Alex Barkov at the center ice position in the face-off dot in the corner. I don't know. I just think that Khusnutdinov, I guess that kind of it doesn't have to be a top 6 thing. This might be why Scott was saying he's probably better off at the wing. Maybe we're sleeping on it because I did like him at center last year. So my reasoning is not logical and it's certainly not fair. I can't see it. I don't know.
It's not logical.
It really isn't because he did play well at center. So I appreciate the question. And I have the same one. I don't know. How often how tall is he? Like 5'6", 5'7"? How often do you see that guy as like a top six center?
That would make it
I think he's listed at 5'11". I don't know if he's actually
get out of here. No, he's not 5'11". He's not taller than Hagens.
Let me check.
I mean, he might be listed, but you guys have been in the locker room with him. How tall is he? When you're sitting next to him, how tall are you?
Similar or slightly taller than Hagens.
Yeah, I would bet he's not much shorter than that. Like maybe
Really?
he's an actual
5'11".
5'10". Yeah,
He's listed. He's listed at 5'11", 184.
Well, I take it back then. I take it back.
Yeah, he's not a super short guy. Like I've definitely been around shorter players.
So he's taller than what Marchand was?
I think so. I think that seems right.
Slightly. I mean, he's definitely taller than Arvidsson.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe he plays smaller. I don't know.
I think he stays low. I think
that's what I'm saying.
Like,
I think
really low. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. He's low to the ice then.
Yeah.
That surprises me. But anyway, I still like him at the wing. I think ultimately because his versatility, and I don't know.
I think I do too. Like I like him kind of being the F1, like kind of the first guy up, kind of creating chaos. And you definitely don't do that as much as a center. You just don't have the chance to do that. I do think, his work ethic, like that can translate to center. And we even heard Marcus Sturm down the stretch last year multiple times talk about like, like people see some of the turnovers he creates offensively, but I think he does so much defensive work too. And it's like, well, yeah, that's the kind of thing you would say about a center. So I guess I don't totally rule it out, but I just really like the way he's looked on the wing. I mean, it's a good question. Like maybe we shouldn't rule it out. I will say I think maybe his offensive ceiling is probably less than you want from a first or second line center. Like he's a player I really like, but I mean, is he ever going to be more than 45 points? Maybe touches 50. Like that's really valuable, but like, I don't think that's a first or second line center, ideally.
You take that back right now.
I mean, in my mind,
what do you guys think? Like, what do you guys think his ceiling is?
Sky's the limit.
I would say somewhere between McDavid and Draisaitl-ish. But now that we talk about it, and I did say like I thought he was smaller than he was, and I do think at center sometimes it's. But if he's not that small, I do love the way he played at center last year when he was there. I like him at all positions because the way he works, it's
that sounded more.
Yeah, but now he's talking about Kuz. He's not worried about it.
Yeah. I just gotta stop talking at this point. I could see long term, like, could I see a world though where if Pavel Zacha is extended, could I see a world where long term your top center is Hagens, your second line center is Minton, and your third line center is Khusnutdinov, and you move Zacha to the wing, and maybe Dean Letourneau's a winger, or maybe Hagens is a winger and Letourneau's a center. But like, could I see Khusnutdinov being like a long time third line center for this team? Like, yeah, I guess I could, because I do like him at center, but maybe he has top 6 wing potential. So I don't want to limit. I mean, I don't want to tie his wings together, right? He's got to be able to fly. A kid like Khusnutdinov, sky's the limit for him, right? So yeah, I would like a roster with 12 Kuzis. I would like to see him play center, left, and right at the same time, up and down the lineup. That's what I would like to see.
And
I also note that he hasn't taken a ton of faceoffs in the NHL. It took a little bit more his last season in Minnesota, but he's 45% in the NHL. So now that can get better if he's taking more, but that is something he would have to improve on if he's playing, especially if he's playing up in the lineup at center.
Well, that's where the size and strength does come into play, right? A lot of the centers at the NHL level, a lot of them, especially they're what, Scott? Like you mentioned this in the past. A lot of the centers are is 6'2" and above, or 6'4" or something like that.
No, it's I think it's more like 6 feet to 6'3" is kind of like the range. Because there aren't, on the other end, there aren't a lot of really tall centers either. Like those guys also tend to struggle. So kind of like 6'3" is almost the cap. And then you'll get some 6'4" and taller.
And then there's Dean Letourneau. But
yeah, we'll see what happens there.
Yep.
All right. So those are the 2 questions we're gonna get to. Any final thoughts from the 2 of you before we sign out?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so.
We're both going to be at Jimmy Fun this early next week. And there should be stuff to come out of that. Players will be available. You said Cam Neely's going on with did you say the afternoon show?
Yeah, with Rich and Ken and Ted Johnson.
Okay. Is that Monday or Tuesday?
I would need to look. I don't have it in front of me. But it's going to be like I forget what they're calling it, but it's like a team management council. So I think it's going to be a couple different front office people from different Boston teams.
Ted Johnson.
So wait, how many headsets are they gonna have? They have 3 guys on that show, and then they're gonna have multiple management people on that show. Nobody's gonna have time to talk.
There's plenty of room.
It's always hard.
Teddy Johnson.
Well, I mean, but you gotta figure, like, I mean, if you think about our set at Jimmy Fun, like there's a lot of space there. I mean, you have whole families coming on.
That's true. Are they gonna sit like on the couch right next to each other? Like,
yeah, it's gonna be like Cam Neely, Sam Kennedy, Jonathan Kraft, and Bill Chisholm, like just all jammed onto one couch,
snuggled in. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I don't know if we're gonna have a chance to talk to Neely separately, or if it's just gonna be whatever he says on the show. I know normally they make the players available after they finish their appearance, so we might get a chance. Yeah, I believe so.
I mean, I know, like I've just chit-chatted with them. I don't know that I've talked to any on the record.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I spoke to people on the record before or not, but I feel like I did. I don't know. We'll see. There'll be something from the players either way, whether or not it's just what they say on the broadcasts, or if we also get to ask a few things. But yeah, so there'll be stuff to come out of that.
Safe to say, Teddy Johnson, not a fan of the skate podcast, not a fan of podcasts.
So apparently not. Yeah, he's been going scorched earth on a bunch of people the last few days.
All right, we'll be quiet. We won't try to ruffle the feathers, I guess.
Oh boy. Alrighty. No good weekend plans for the two of you guys after that, or before Jimmy Fun?
I got broadcast both days.
I'm going to watch polo this weekend in Newport.
I've been there. I went there a couple.
I've been there before too. It's a good time. Like you basically like rent out a spot and you're kind of just tailgating and watching the horses run around and people try to score. It's a pretty good day. It's entertaining.
Yeah,
horse hockey.
I went there.
Exactly.
20? I was there about 5 years ago. Went down to Newport before one of my buddies got married, and a lot of I don't know, a lot of plastic surgery, a lot of this, I didn't realize what I was getting myself into.
It's an interesting crowd.
Thought it was a Halloween party. I was like, what's going on here with these costumes and makeups and what is all this?
Well, Scott's going to be wearing one of those fancy hats like they do at the Kentucky Derby. So with a big flower on it.
I'm actually wearing a horse costume.
Okay. All right.
Actually,
are you going to try to be the horse?
Yeah, I'm just going to run
sneak onto the field during the game. Oh god,
Scott,
pass me the ball.
It's like, who's this horse with a hockey stick right now?
Speaking of interesting sports being played domestically,
the Ocho.
The Ocho. No, not the Ocho. Scott, this is probably about I'd say about eight years ago or so, maybe 9. I went to a hurling game at Fenway. Have you ever been to one of those?
No, but I want to. I've been I want to go to Ireland, period. So like I've been saving in my mind, like when I go to Ireland someday, I'm definitely going to hurling when I'm there. But I do remember they came to Fenway, and I don't remember what I had, but for some reason I didn't go. But I remember thinking about it at the time and just not being able to make it.
Yeah, it's, if you don't know what hurling is, I mean, I don't blame you. It's like 5 sports combined. It's like rugby and field hockey and football, and it's soccer. It's entertaining, that's for sure. But in any event, I think that'll do it for this episode. Once you get to the hurling conversation, we can probably move on. So thank you all very much for listening. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.